Hi, everybody. I am Jack Wheeler, and I am an alcoholic, and I have been sober by the grace of God and the 36 spiritual principles of Alcoholics Anonymous since January 1st, 2004. And for that, I am very grateful and thank you all for that. Uh, Kevin, it's nice to see you, man. And that meeting still goes on. It's a great group, and I go to it most mornings. And it is Alcoholics Anonymous. It's nice to be here. I have some friends in Kingsport as well. I drove through Kingsport in the middle of the night about a month and a half ago, taking my uncle back to New York from Texas. And I thought about Alcoholics Anonymous as I drove through there because I know there's some members there and in good standing. And it's nice to be with you. It's nice to be invited to do something in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm the guy that never got invited anywhere. I am from Carbondale, Colorado, which is about $4.5 million south of Aspen. It's where everybody that can't afford to live in Aspen lives. And I grew up in Aspen. And it's nice to see people from all over, you know. Alcoholism knows no bounds. It doesn't matter where we're from, who we are, how much money we have, how much money we don't have. Alcoholism is alive and well. And the good thing is so is Alcoholics Anonymous. I grew up in Aspen, and my family had a ranch outside of Aspen most of my life. And my mom loves Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. And she would say whenever we had a holiday coming up, she'd say, "Hey, anybody that doesn't have somewhere to go, bring them to the ranch." And recently, in the last few years, I had a guy with me, and I'm sitting at the holiday table, and he said to me, he said, "When did you have your first drink?" And the whole family's there, and I said, "Well, I think I had my first drink when I was around 8 years old." And my mom sitting across the table heard me say that, and she said, "You did not." And I said, "Yeah, Mom, I did. It's funny. She's calling me a liar in front of the new guy." And I said, "Yeah, I did." I said, "Dad and I used to go snowmobiling, and we'd get out a couple hours in, we'd stop to have something to eat. And he always had a Bota bag full of peach brandy. And he would give me a sip to warm me up. And it did warm me up. And I'm sitting there telling my mom this story, and she's getting madder and madder at my dad, which I enjoy. I like it when my dad's on the spot. And he's shaking his head, "Yeah, that did happen." And then I said to her, I said, "Mom, that has nothing to do with why I'm an alcoholic." I said, "I'm an alcoholic because when I put alcohol in my body, I get the phenomenon of craving. And if you try to explain the phenomenon of cravings to somebody that's never experienced it, they have no idea what you're talking about. But when I say that in Alcoholics Anonymous, you all shake your head. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, I'm the guy that drank against my will. All the evidence, my life is burning to the ground. And I have this, it doesn't matter. I'm going to drink again." And I said to my mom, I said, "That's not the only thing that makes me an alcoholic." I said, "The other thing that makes me an alcoholic is that when I'm stone cold sober, standing in the burning wreckage of my life, I have a mind that will convince me, despite all the evidence, that it's a good idea to take a drink again." And it happens every single time. And those two things make me qualified to be here. Those two things are the things that make us shake our head. The gift of identification in Alcoholics Anonymous is what unites us. You know, I'm the guy that could not drink no matter what I did. And I didn't start drinking regularly when I was 8 years old. By the time I was 12, I was drinking regularly. And by the time I was 13, I got taken to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous by a really astute school counselor. And she put together that the two things that was always in my stories of woe and misfortune was me and alcohol. And it was the late 70s in Aspen, Colorado. And she took me to the community center, and we walked into the community center, and there was a little card table set up in this gigantic room. And there was probably 6 or 8 people around the table. Aspen's a small place. It's 3,500 people when the lifts are closed. And I walked in there, and I did what alcoholism does. I saw all the differences. Everybody around that table had gray hair, or they looked like they should have gray hair. And I'm 13 years old with a school counselor. And the only thing I learned of any importance that night is that there was something called Alcoholics Anonymous. It became really pertinent to my life later on. And I sat through that meeting and I continued to see that counselor, and I cut a deal with that counselor. And the deal is that I'd stop drinking Jack Daniels and I'd only drink beer on the weekends. And I continued to see her for another 2 weeks. And you know the story. It's the story of alcoholism. I showed up to a party and we ran out of beer, and we didn't run out of Jack Daniels. And you know what happened. I drank the Jack Daniels, and I was so embarrassed by that, so humiliated by that, because I wanted to keep the agreement. I didn't want to drink the Jack Daniels, but I have this thing inside me that says it's okay, no matter what the evidence says. And I never went back to see her again because I was devastated, humiliated, and just couldn't figure out. I was confounded by the fact that I didn't want to drink it, and I drank it anyway. And that's the story of alcoholism. I'm the guy that drinks when I don't want to drink. I'm the guy that cannot control it. I am powerless over it. By the time I was 16 or 17 years old, I had a system. We all have our systems to survive alcoholism. And my system is I would run until I couldn't run anymore on any given night. And I had figured out that if I rolled I lived 30 miles from town, I couldn't get home. And I'd roll into the sheriff's department 2 o'clock in the morning, minor, drunk, in their lobby. And it was different then. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it was different. And they would load me in a patrol car and they'd drive me the 30 miles to the ranch, and they'd kick me out at the bottom of the driveway, and they wouldn't talk to my parents and just leave me. It was the original Uber, and I did it night after night. I did it for years. And every cop in that town knew who I was. And I thought that, I'd be walking down the street with friends and they'd say hello to me by name. I thought it was cool. It's not a cool thing if you know every cop in town by name. It's just not, but our standards are low. I used to say from the podium that my parents kicked me out of the house, but through good sponsorship and step work, I know that that's not true today. My parents told me I could live there if I could follow 3 simple rules. And if you suffer the spiritual malady like I suffer the spiritual malady, they're difficult rules. The rules were do what you say you're going to do, help out around the house, and be where you say you're going to be. And I couldn't get any of them done. And they were persistent. And I made it all their fault, and I moved out of the house. And I moved in with my drug dealer, which is not a good idea for a guy like me. We have competing interests. He wants to sell it, and I want to do it. And that didn't last long. And then I rented an apartment. And I found out that if you rent an apartment, they tend to want you to pay rent on time. And that didn't last long. And then I used every couch and every friend. I call them friends now, but today I understand that friendship requires responsibility. It requires respect. Those types of things I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous. And eventually I didn't have any of that. And I moved into a little playhouse in a park in Aspen. And I would go until I couldn't go anymore. And then I'd crawl up in there and I'd pass out and I'd come to. And that's where I lived. And I was homeless. And I did what we do. I overshot the mark because I drank too much Crown and couldn't measure the cocaine properly. And I ended up in OD'd in the park in Aspen at 18 years old. And it scared me, it scared me. It was one of those close calls where they thought I was going to die and I thought I was going to die. And I got out of there the next day. And when I was laying in the hospital bed right before they discharged me, I was thinking about this girl, good friend of mine. She hung out with us. She did everything with us. She drank like I did. She did all the things that I did. And she had disappeared for 28 days prior to this. Where do you go for 28 days? And when she came home, I noticed something different. She could do amazing things. She would come up to us at like 6 o'clock in the evening and say, I got to go home. I got to work tomorrow. And she would actually go home, and she would actually go to work the next day. And things like that got my attention because I couldn't do that. when you're an 18-year-old alcoholic and you're comparing yourself to everybody you run into, you can't figure out why you can't stop and they can. You have no idea. You don't even, I didn't even notice that I was going through friends on Monday night and Tuesday night and Wednesday night. It was a totally different group of friends every night. And I would think they drink like I do, but they didn't. And I thought they had more willpower than I did. That's what I thought. I think that we compare ourselves and we can't understand why we're not the same as most people out there. Well, our book tells us that we're bodily, mentally different than our fellows. We come in here thinking we're different than, we're less than, we just can't stack up. And it's because we can't. You're different. If you're in this room and you suffer the spiritual malady like I do, I got news for you. You're different. You are. The cool thing is when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was with my people. I wasn't different anymore. I was the same as you. And it was the first place I ever came where I felt like that. And I called that girl that morning I got out of the hospital and I said, Karen, what'd you do? She said, Jack, what I did was I went to treatment. I got separated from alcohol. And now I go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And she 12-stepped me right there on the phone because what she did was she told me her story. The gift in Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the many, is that this is the first place I came where you didn't tell me what to do. You didn't tell me to drink like a gentleman. You didn't tell me to get responsible. You didn't tell me any of that. You told me what you did. You told me what you were doing. You told me that I had a chair there. And that's the magic here. It's the first place I came where you didn't tell me what to do. And I say that with some hesitancy because if I sponsor you, I'm going to tell you what to do. But I do it by sharing my experience. This is what I did, and this is what worked for me. If you want what I have, rock on, man. If you want what millions of people around this world that suffer the alcoholism just like you, rock on. Come on. There's space at the table for you. And and she told me about the phenomenon of craving for the first time ever. She told me about the mental obsession, the insanity that goes with this thing. And she told me about it through her story. And she said that she was going to Alcoholics Anonymous and she liked it. Imagine that. She liked going to Alcoholics Anonymous. She told me about how, as alcoholics, our problems pile up on us and become astonishingly difficult to solve. I understood that. That's exactly where I was. I'm just rolling out of the hospital. And my problems seemed like an astonishing pile. And every single guy I sponsor, every new guy I work with, my own experience tells me that when we walk through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, you couldn't peel my eyeball off of that astonishing pile of problems. I am so focused on that. If we could just fix these things, I'd be okay. And I was told, and I tell guys now, stop looking at the pile. Those things are not your problem. Stop looking at the pile. And it's so hard to get us to stop looking at the pile. The steps do that for us. They pull our eyeballs off the material world and let us know that this is an internal malady. They let us know that we got to treat the inside first. And I called my mom after I talked to Karen that morning, and my mom is a saint. I hadn't seen her in a while because of what I made it her fault when I moved out of the house, and I called her up and I told her I think I'm in trouble. I'd like to talk to you. She said okay. And she met me at my place, and we're sitting on the park bench. And I'm sitting there, her only son, in clothes that are 3 sizes too small and not mine. And I'm telling her my story. I said, Mom, I'm in trouble. I think I'm an alcoholic. This is a really important part. What she said to me was, no, you're not. You can't be. That stigma of alcoholism has to go away. We do it in the rooms. We talk about it like it's bad. I have news for you. Being an alcoholic, having alcoholism, suffering that spiritual malady that we talk about has nothing to do with me being good or bad. It has everything to do with me being sick or well. And if you're new here, I promise you one thing: get with a guy that's had a spiritual awakening or a woman that's had a spiritual awakening, because well is available right here, right now. That's the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my mom tried to convince me that I wasn't an alcoholic sitting on that bench. And eventually, I told you, my mom's a saint after talking to me, after seeing me in the condition I was sitting there in. She made it possible for me to go into treatment. And in 1982, and I went into treatment, and I was separated from alcohol. And I spent 30 days in that treatment center or something like that. And I got out, and all where I went to treatment is 4 hours from Aspen, and I'm driving home that day, and I'm terrified. I'm free. Guys like me drink when they're free. 30 days in treatment makes a guy like me thirsty. And I'm driving home, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And what came to me wasn't a model patient in that treatment center. And what came to me is I remember seeing the staff members in a break room one day at that treatment center, and they were talking to each other. And one of them said, if we can just get these knuckleheads to go to a meeting the first day they get out there, chances of long-term recovery would skyrocket. And I heard that. And I'm driving back to Aspen, and it's 1982, and there aren't meetings 3 times a day like there are now. There aren't meetings in every town around us 3 times a day. And I roll into town. There were 3 meetings a week in Aspen at that time. And I roll into town, and one of the great coincidences of my life is there was a meeting that day, that night. And I went into that meeting, and now there's probably 16 to 20 people around that card table. And I roll in there, and they read something out of this book, and it goes around the room, and everybody shared something, and it came around to me. And I shared about cocaine or a big bag of Quaaludes or something, just to piss off all the old timers, because I'd learned that in treatment. And you know what you guys said to me? You said, keep coming back. You don't have to get good or get well to come to Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous meets us right where we are every single day. And they said, keep coming back. And I did. And I'd go to that meeting the next week. And this guy, if you're new here, I got news for you. The old timers in Alcoholics Anonymous can't hear. This old timer would come up to me after the meeting and say, hey, Jack, we're going to the prison on Friday to take a meeting. Do you want to come? And I would say, no, Bruce, I'm very busy on Friday night. I do not want to go to the prison, because I didn't. And I don't know if it was 6 or 8 weeks, but every single time that meeting would end, he would come up to me and say, hey, Jack, we're going to the prison on Friday night. Do you want to come? And I would say, no, Bruce, I definitely don't want to come. I'm very busy on Friday night. If you suffer the spiritual malady like I do, and you have no solution, the activity on Friday night is I'd be sitting in my 1-room apartment below the Holiday Inn kitchen, hanging onto the side of my chair, trying not to drink. That's what I was doing. It's an activity. And finally, I said to him, he came up to me and said that, and I said to him, yes, I'll go, just to shut him up, just to get him to stop asking me. And I'm sitting on the corner where he told me to be on Friday afternoon, and he comes rolling up in a minivan full of you guys, smiling and looking like you're having a great time. I did not want to get in the minivan. I wanted nothing to do with it. And I did. I got in the minivan, and we drove over to that prison, and it's about a 90-mile drive from Aspen. And we roll up, and it's a real prison. It's where everybody threatens you. You're going when you're a bad kid. You're going to that place. And we showed up, and it was one of those delusions. And I showed up, and there were guard towers and chain link fences and concrete bunk dorms, and we're cruising around. We get through the gun towers and the chain link fence, and we're walking down along the cell block, and I'm terrified. And from the 3rd floor window of a cell block, you hear, "Hey, Wheeler!" And I almost fainted. I almost fell over. And Bruce, without missing a step, said, "You're in the right place," and just kept walking. And that's been my experience here. We hear all the time, "Are you willing?" I don't care if you're willing. I want to know if you're available. Can you come? Because by saying yes when I'm available, my life has changed dramatically, dramatically, just by saying yes if I'm available. And that man got me through the steps, spoon fed them to me, drug me through the steps. And I had what's promised. I had that spiritual awakening. I have news for you. If you have a spiritual awakening, you'll want to help others. It's one of the results. It's not. If it was left to me, I'd never help anybody. I'm self-centered that way, right? But when you have the spiritual awakening that's referred to in our book, in the text, when you take the steps like they're outlined in the book, you're going to have a spiritual awakening. You're going to want to help out others. And that was my experience. And I started sponsoring guys and I got married. To let you know how I roll, I'm riding up the ski lift and with my sister. I'm 16, 17 years old, and I'm riding up the ski lift in this beautiful blonde skis below us. And I said to my sister, "I'm going to marry her." She said to me, "Who is she?" I said, "I don't know, but I've seen her around school." And we are celebrating 41 years this year. One of my greatest character defects that's become one of my greatest assets in Alcoholics Anonymous is my stalking skills. And I say that with like I'm being facetious, but the reality is it's true. I followed my sponsor around. I saw that guy. He took me through the steps and I just did what he did. That's the stalking skills I'm talking about. Today, I'm sponsored by a different man and I follow him around. I do what he does. So I would let you know that you should hone your stalking ability in Alcoholics Anonymous because it's helpful. And, the I don't know if I was 8 years sober at the time. I'm sponsoring a bunch of guys. I got a home group. I got a commitment in that home group. I'm doing the deal. And I'm driving to my home group on a Tuesday night. And to get to my home group, you got it from the ranch, you got to drive down a pretty incredible trout stream. And I'm an avid fly fisherman, and there's a hatch coming off the river, and I think to myself, I should fish. And I pulled over and I fished, and I didn't go to my home group that night. You know what happened to me when I didn't go to my home group? Nothing. I went fishing. And 2 weeks later, I'm driving down the road and Thursday night to go to a Thursday night meeting. And the same hatch is coming off the river. And I think to myself, I should fish the hatch. And I pulled over and I fished. You know what happened to me when I didn't go to my Thursday night meeting? Nothing. I went fishing. The insidious nature of alcoholism is I can't see it on me. I can't see it. When the veil of alcoholism is dropping down over my eyes again, I can't see it. That's why we're here together. There's something about hanging out with each other that helps us see the reality of our own life when we're talking about someone else. When I'm taking a new guy through the work and he's sharing his stuff with me, I'm seeing it all over my life. But I can't see it on myself. I'm the guy that can't keep himself sober. I can't do it. And I'll tell you what happened. I slowly unplugged from Alcoholics Anonymous. And at 13 years sober, I drank again. I hear about relief in Alcoholics Anonymous a lot. And relief is not what I'm looking for. I'm going to read something to you from our text that will set the table for where I'm going to go. It says, "It is our great hope that all those who have as yet found no answer may begin to find one in the pages of this book and will presently join us on the high road to a new freedom." Freedom is what I want to talk about, not relief. Relief is completely self-centered. Relief is based on how I feel. Freedom is based in who I be. And the transformation that's promised to us in Alcoholics Anonymous is about who we be. That transformation of heart, that change of heart. In 3 places in our text, it talks about the change of heart is the transformation that we're talking about. And I've had that. And when your heart changes, everything about you changes. Everything. And you can't do anything about it. Can't do a thing about it. That's the magic. And at 13 years sober, I drank again. I'd like to tell you with my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous and my knowledge of the big book that I came running back to you, but that's not my story. My story is I'm powerless. And I was out for 10 years. I could recite the big book to you. I could tell you exactly what it says about step 1, step 2, step 3. I could tell you exactly how, if you want to write a 4th step that's out of the big book, what that looks like. I could tell you how to do your 8th step list. I could tell you what to do with 6 and 7. I could tell you exactly how I could share my experience with step 9 with you. I could tell you what it looked like to have the disciplines in your life. I can tell you what it looks like not to have the disciplines as well. And I couldn't get back with all my knowledge of the big book. I could not get back here. And I'm probably, the first time I'm homeless living in the park in Aspen. The second time I'm flying around on private planes. I've got 250 employees. I've got businesses in Aspen, Jackson Hole, and Kona, Hawaii. I couldn't outspend my income. This thing doesn't care who we are. I'm flying around on private planes and dying of alcoholism. Can't find my way back to Alcoholics Anonymous. Can't not start drinking. Can't do it. And I wanted to. And I had a condo on a Lee Drive in Kona, and I'd go until I couldn't go anymore. I'd wake up in the morning bleeding from my eyeballs, and I'd crawl down to the church on the beach, and they'd have a meeting there at the Aloha Mana group in Kona. And I'd go in there first thing in the morning, and I'd watch all you guys smiling, having a wonderful meeting, and I'd be dying of alcoholism, just gritting my teeth trying to get through the meeting. And as I left the meeting, I'd get on my cell phone and I'd call my wife and I'd say, hey, I'm just leaving the meeting, heading to the office. And it was just me trying to hang on to some piece of my own value system. I'd go to that meeting just so I could call my wife and not lie to her. I'm trying not to lie to my wife, and my whole life is a lie. Think about that. That's the depths we end up with alcoholism. The journey into Alcoholics Anonymous is one of me trying to be the guy I want to be and not being able to get it done, no matter how hard I want to. I didn't want to be that guy. And yet there I was. And, I'm probably, I don't know if it was year 8 that I was out there or what, but I get a phone call in Hawaii, and it's my mom. And she says, hey, listen, your dad just got diagnosed with kidney failure. He's dying. He needs a new kidney. Will you please go get tested? The news in itself was crushing. And I said, of course I will. And I hung up the phone with my mom. And I started looking for flights home to go get tested. And I was in Hawaii, and they live here. And every intention of going to get tested. And somewhere between hanging up the phone and getting home, I had thought about it, and what I realized was that to find out if I was a match would require a blood test. They didn't know I was drinking, and I realized that I had the story I came up with is I had to be clean for 7 days to save my dad's life. My mom would call me. I got home and I told my mom I'd go in and do it, and to this day, I never put the 7 days together. I'd wake up in the morning and every fiber in my body would say, this is the day. This is the beginning. I'm going to get tested to save my dad's life. He's my neighbor. I live on the ranch with him. And to this day, I've never been tested. I could never put the 7 days together. I don't even know if that's true, but I couldn't put the 7 days together. My dad's fine. he got my brother-in-law's kidney. My mom would call me up and say, "Hey, I've got an appointment for you. Get the test to see if you're a match on Friday. Will you please show up?" I would say yes, and I wouldn't show up. So it was like that. And I was probably 3 or 4 years sober again. Been through the steps a bunch. Had actually done all of my 9 step. Was actually engaged in the daily disciplines. I was working with other guys, sponsoring guys. I had a home group again. I had commitments at the home group. I had commitments in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm sitting in my home group in the topics on the 8th step. And for the first time ever, I heard the 8th step for what it is. Made a list of all the people we've harmed, all of them. I've read the book more carefully today. I've had different experiences with it, and I know it says that we made a list of the people we have harmed. And today I encourage the guys I sponsor to list the people they've harmed, even if there's no resentment. And I realized, like, I started crying in my home group that night, just tears, sobbing, that I realized that I had harmed them, and by not getting tested, by not being able to stand up for my dad when my mom wanted me to. And I'm crying, and I'm sitting next to Gigi a good friend of mine, when the meeting ends, and Gigi says to me, "What's wrong?" And I told her. I said, "I never made amends to my parents for that." She said, "Well, you got to go do it." I was like, "Duh, of course I do." And I got in my truck the next day and I drove up to the ranch, and my dad is a rough, tough cowboy contractor, and he comes driving up in front of my truck on his Polaris Ranger. And I get out of my truck and I'm already crying. And I walk up and my dad says, "What's wrong?" And I said to him, "I got to make amends to you for something. I got a piece of business I got to talk to you about." And he said, "Oh no, we've already done all that," because I made amends to him for most things that I had seen and the things that had come up. I'd already done that. And we were good. But sometimes there's new information we don't see until we can see. And I said to him, I said, "Dad, when you were dying of kidney failure and you asked me to go get tested, I never showed up for you. I don't know how to make that right, but I'll do anything you ask me to do." And I'm crying and whinging, and he starts laughing. He says, "Jack, what I want you to do is keep doing what you're doing, because I may need another one." And that's funny, but it's true. I stand here today as a direct amends to my dad. He said, "Keep doing what you're doing. I was doing this then, I'm doing it now." This is direct amends to my dad. My mom's a lot smarter than my dad. And I went up to her after I talked to my dad, and I'm a mess. And I go up to my mom and I said the same thing. When you called me and to go get tested for dad, I never showed up. You're your only son. And I never showed up for him. And I never addressed it with you. And I'm sorry. And I don't know what to do, but you tell me, and I'll do anything. Anything you ask me to do, I'm willing to do. And what she said to me, she said, "Jack, what I want you to do is I want you to keep working with the young men you're working with. Hard stop." Because she knows that the magic here is one drunk talking to another. Once you're spiritually awakened here, you have a job. It's one job. You have a job. It's to carry this message, the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my mom knew that. And that's what she asked me to do. I'd like to tell you when all that happened. I tell the amends story then because I'll forget. But I didn't get sober then. That 2 years later, I'm like Bill, man. You read Bill's story, it's like I was done forever. 3 years later, he's still drunk. We're powerless. As much as I want to, I can't do it. And I was sitting in my shop a couple of years later, drinking little shooters of Kahlua and eating Percocet. I'm not proud of the Kahlua. If I knew it was going to be my last drink, it wouldn't have been Kahlua. And I'm sitting there, and I got the big book open on my workbench, and I'm going stark raving mad, just mad. And I look out the window of my shop, and my son's with his grandfather, my father, pulling the Christmas tree up the driveway to the house. And I had been too busy to go with them to get the Christmas tree. And I don't know why that was my moment, but that was my moment. That was that moment when grace gets in. And I just knew. And I walked in the house, and I told my wife what was going on. And she said, go talk to your sponsor, because she had started going to Al-Anon a year before that. And I had started going to AA, and I know none of you ever do this, but I lied to my sponsor for a year and continued to drink. And I had a sponsor, and I went down and talked to him. And if you have a plan, please share it with your sponsor. I went down and shared my plan with my sponsor, and he changed my plan, as they do. And thank God they do. And I ended up going into a place and getting separated from alcohol for the last time. And I went into that place dying of alcoholism. And I came out of it on fire with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm probably 3, 4, 5 months sober. I don't remember exactly. And I'm sitting in the steps group here on Thursday night in Carbondale. And it's a blizzard out, and the church is shut down because the boilers are broken. And we're meeting in this little rectory behind the church, and we're thinking nobody's going to find us. And about 10 after 8, the door blows open, and this couple comes in, and they're overjeweled and underdressed for our area in a blizzard. And I'm thinking he's a new guy, and she's bringing him to a meeting, and I'm on fire with this thing, and I've got a book in my hand, and I'm watching the clock. Can't wait for it to turn 9 o'clock so I can go jump on the new guy. And I'm watching the clock, and 9 o'clock hits, and I go up to him, and I beat the other guys in my own group to him. And I said to him, hey, I'm Jack. I've been sober, blah, blah, blah. I got a book. What's your story? It took about 5 minutes for me to understand the terms of the relationship. He was in town from Texas looking at things in Carbondale and had 35 years of sobriety. He became my sponsor. And I don't know if it was 6 months. He took me through the steps and showed me what it looked like to be a principled man in Alcoholics Anonymous. And he came up to me one day, and he said, Jack, I want you to buy a plane ticket. I said, Don, where are we going? He said, we're going to go down to Texas to this AA Al-Anon thing for a weekend. I said, Don, I'm not going to Texas to some AA Al-Anon thing for a weekend. He said, no, I want you to go. I want you to buy the plane ticket. And then he said, and I want Steph to go, my wife. I said, that's never going to happen. And I went home that night, and I told Steph what Don said, another one of the coincidences of my life. And I said to her, and I don't know where it came from, because I wasn't going when I opened my mouth to talk to Steph. And I said, I want to go. And we bought plane tickets to go to Texas. And we got on the plane, and we flew to Texas, and we arrived in Texas on Thursday afternoon. And on Thursday night, we're in an AA meeting at the conference. And then Friday morning, we wake up and we go to meetings all morning on Friday. And then we eat lunch together, and we go to meetings all afternoon and all night. And then we go to this stupid, ridiculous bonfire gratitude meeting afterwards. We get up on Saturday, and we do it all again. And then there's a silly ice cream social on Saturday night. We get up on Sunday, and we go to meetings all morning on Sunday. And we get in the car to leave the conference. And I said to Don, where are we going? He said, we're going to a meeting. I said, Don, we've been at meetings since Thursday. He said, well, we're going to go to another meeting. That's what we do here. And he took us to our first home meeting. And we're sitting around this living room with these people that became the giants of our lives. And we're sitting in there, and Steph's on the couch in the living room crying her eyes out, embarrassing me. And one of the ladies, Billy, said to Steph, she said, what's wrong? And Steph said to her, why are you doing this for us? And Billy said, Steph, we're doing it for you because someone did it for us. And one day you're going to do it for someone else. And my wife and I are still on the board of that conference. I can't tell you the number of people we brought down there. And that's what we do here. We do it because someone did it for us. But it's our responsibility to do it for someone else. It's our spiritual responsibility to do it for someone else. That's all we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's nothing else. I know we come here looking for happiness. I had a guy, I was going turkey hunting with him. And I show up at his house and we're talking, and he said, Jack, you just want to be happy. I said, yeah, I do, Bobby. What's wrong with that? He said, there's rooms for people that are happy all the time. And there's pads on the walls. Happy all the time is mental illness. What Alcoholics Anonymous promises us is we can show up in life and not have to drink, be free. The richness of life. We were taught by my wife's sponsor that the richness of life is the tears and the laughter and the joy and the grief. All of it provide the richness of life, all of it. And for the first time ever, I can live through that. I can stand in my own shoes and let it just happen. Know that it's not personal. I'm the guy that showed up at Alcoholics Anonymous thinking life was coming at me. Today, I know life is coming from me. How am I showing up? Am I a principled man in Alcoholics Anonymous? My granddaughter, Abigail, when she was 4 years old, I said, Abigail, what's your favorite color? She said, Grandpa, my favorite color is orange. I said, that's nice, Abigail. What's your second favorite color? She said, Grandpa, my second favorite color is orange. Why wouldn't it be? Is the epiphany I had. Hey, Jack, what's your favorite solution? My favorite solution is God. Hey, Jack, what's your second favorite solution? My second favorite solution is God. It's that simple here. God's the answer. Spiritual awakening. I don't care how you define God either. It makes no difference. I use the word God and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Jack, what's your favorite solution? It's orange. What's your second favorite solution? It's orange. That's the magic here. We have the same answer to all the questions. It's always the same answer. And once you have an experience with that, no one can shut you up because we have the good news. When some guy's dying of alcoholism and doesn't think he can not drink, I have some good news for him. I am you, and you are me. And today, my favorite color is orange. The funny thing is we'll all walk out of this meeting on fire with Alcoholics Anonymous and God. And then on Wednesday, something will happen. I was checking my story. Abigail was 7. I said to Abigail, what's your favorite color? She said, Grandpa, my favorite color is orange. I said, Abigail, what's your second favorite color? She said, Grandpa, my second favorite color is chocolate. And I wanted to shake her. That's not the story, Abigail. But that's the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. We all understand it's orange today. But by 2 days from now, it's going to be chocolate, or it's going to be money, or it's going to be a health issue. It's going to be something, the worldly clamors. And I have this program of action that brings me back to God every single time. I just have to follow the directions. I just have to work with a new guy. And I get delivered. I was invited to go on I think that the third step is the entire solution to alcoholism. If we could actually make that decision and keep it affected in our life all of the time, we'd be good. And we can't. And that's what the rest of the steps do. They drive us back into that decision like our life depends on it. Not only our life, someone else's as well. And I was down in the Grand Canyon. I was invited to go. A buddy of mine pulled a private permit, and we put a group together, and we went down the Grand Canyon. And we're like day 6 or 7 on the canyon. And we're in this place called Nankoweap, and it's the most spiritual place I've ever been. There's history there with the ruins, and it's just magnificent. And I'm sitting on a boulder on the side of the river at 5 a.m. praying and meditating like you taught me to do. And I'm praying and I'm meditating. I'm watching the sun come up and light up the whole canyon wall. I'm in perfect place. I'm at perfect peace and ease. I have no wrong motives. I'm just good. And I'm smoking a cigar and I'm praying and meditating and watching the light show. And I put the cigar out on the side of the boulder I'm sitting on, and I field strip it and put it in my pocket. And I get up from the boulder to walk back to camp. And there's this giant black ash mark on the side of the boulder. And I noticed it. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't leave that there. So I go down the river, I get some gravel, I get some sand and water, and I try washing the side of I'm down there 6 o'clock in the morning trying to wash this boulder. And what I can tell you is I couldn't get the mark off the boulder. I guarantee you, if you go down to that spot today, you would see an ash mark. It's faded, but it's still there. And the daily discipline, step 10, what I realized a few days later, because I'm not a quick study, what I realized is step 10 is that's what it's all about. Everywhere I go, I leave a mark. Everywhere. Am I leaving a good mark or am I leaving a bad mark? And if I practice those disciplines in 10 and 11, consistently committed to it, what I know today is I leave the best mark possible. And everywhere I go, I leave a mark. And that's the magic of the disciplines. I showed up at a buddy of mine's house. I'll get us out of here on time. I showed up at a buddy of mine's house, and we were supposed to be on the mountain. And I show up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, Bobby, let's go. Turkey are going. Let's get out of here. And he's sitting there drinking a cup of coffee and reading something. And he was 26 years sober at the time. I was probably 6 years sober. And I said, Bobby, let's go, man. He goes, Jack, you just want to seize the day, don't you? I said, yes, I do, Bobby. We're supposed to be up on the mountain. Let's go. He said, Jack, what I want you to do is I want you to sit down here and have a cup of coffee with me, and we'll do a reading, and we'll spend some quiet time, and then we'll go join the day. And that's the 11th step. I don't have to seize the day. It was God's day. It was perfectly good without me. And today I get to join God's day. If I can, with commitment and consideration, prayerful consideration, if I do these disciplines, they hold me in good stead in spite of myself. The greatest thing I ever got in Alcoholics Anonymous is I didn't get what I wanted. If I would have got what I wanted, I would have sold God short. My wife and I had a houseboat on Lake Powell for a lot of years. And once a year, every year, we would invite our sponsors and their spouses and all our road dogs and their kids, and everybody would pile on the houseboat, and we'd go do what we do. We'd go out and play in the sun. And we get up in the morning and do morning meditation together, and then we'd have fun during the day and play in the sun. And then we do a morning bonfire, one of those stupid gratitude bonfire meetings. And it was the last day of the trip, and I'm sliding down the side of the houseboat, getting things put away so we go back to the marina and end the trip. And I hear the kids up on the roof of the houseboat. And this is what I heard. They're up on the roof of the houseboat, and I hear, you're the sponsor, you're the new guy, you're the Al-Anon, I'm the chairperson. And they're up on the roof of the houseboat playing Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. And I think if we're doing it so well that the kids are copying us, we're right where God wants us. Thank you for having me.